Welcome to Cabinet. It is Friday the 20th of November. As usual, this is being broadcast live via the County Council's website and will be archived so you can view it afterwards. For members of the public, this meeting is being held remotely. All members are joining from their homes or wherever online. To start with, I'll just do the normal brief roll call to make sure everyone can hear and see. So I'll start off with Lee Brecken.
Yes, here, sir.
Thank you. Blake Payne.
Here, Leader.
Great. Trev.
Yep, Nick.
Myron.
Yes.
Good. Louise.
Yes, here.
Richard Shepherd.
Yes, I'm here.
Deborah Taylor.
Here.
Can I also say, just so you know, Richard Blunt sends his apologies. He has managed to catch COVID-19, and I think he caught it from his son coming home from school. So he has been at home now for 10 days at least. He sent me a text message. I did speak to him. He does sound pretty groggy, but I think he'll be all right given time. So he sends his apologies and asks that I tell you. Okay, a few more things. To help the meeting run smoothly, can I remind everyone, raise your hand, the little yellow hand thing if you want to speak. If you can switch microphones off while we're not speaking, but keep your pictures on so it's better for any members of the public that may log in. At the end of the debate of each report, please turn your microphones on. If there doesn't appear to be any dissent, I won't need to do a roll call of votes every time. But if you do want to disagree, all you have to do is say you want to disagree, and then we'll have to go through the roll call to see if the motion is carried. So the next agenda item is apologies. I've already mentioned Rich, so I don't need to mention that again. So agenda item 1 on pages 5 to 12 are the minutes, and I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of October 2020 are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Blake, can you second that?
I will indeed. Happy to second.
Thank you very much. So nobody's indicating they're not unhappy, so I'll say, is that all agreed? Excellent. Thank you very much. Agenda item 2 is urgent items, and we have none. Agenda item 3 is declarations of interest. Does anybody have any interest in respect of any items on the agenda? Okay, we can record that as no then. So agenda item 4 is financial resilience. This is on pages 13 to 36. It's an update on the Council's financial resilience, including the earmarked funds policy, which is being revised to reflect the impact of COVID and help maintain our general fund at an appropriate level. With us, we've got Chris Tambini, Director of Corporate Resources, who'll present the report. Then after that, I should go to Byron, who's the Cabinet Lead for Resources. So over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Leader. I think Cabinet are very familiar with our financial position, which is clearly extremely challenging and not at all helped by our low funded position. I think members are also aware that the fair funding review has been delayed yet again. So there's no prospect of that low funding baseline position changing anytime soon. This report considers our financial resilience in a slightly different way than the usual focus on the revenue budget. In this report, we consider our balance sheets, so really looking closely at our assets and our liabilities. And I'm not going to go through the report in detail because it does contain a lot of information, but overall, I think we can say we are in a reasonable position. We haven't stored up any problems in the past, for example, by borrowing heavily or by using our reserves for day-to-day expenditure. The report also shows that this is backed up independently, so we've got extra information from the CIPFA Resilience Index, and also our external auditors also have said we're in a fairly sound position. Financial resilience really does matter. We are seeing the consequences now, probably on a weekly and sometimes a daily basis, of those authorities who've stored up problems in the past. Last week we had Croydon, who in effect declared they couldn't set a legal budget. This week we had Bexley, who've gone to MHCLG asking permission to borrow to fund their revenue gap. And there's every indication there's going to be many more authorities that find themselves in similar positions. I'd also stress that financial resilience isn't an aim in itself. if you do have sound finances, you can respond to crises like the one the county council's facing at the moment. So during this crisis, we found money for things like community grants. The next report on the agenda is finding some extra money for free school meals, and critically, we found money for social care services since the start of the pandemic back in March. It also kind of matters for day-to-day services. And the report does contain many examples of those authorities who've had to respond with very deep cuts to their services in a short period of time for some of the stored up problems that are now coming home to roost. So the overall position, although our financial position is challenging, I can reassure members that our balance sheet is in a reasonable position, but it is important we try and keep it that way for what is going to be a very, very difficult few years ahead of us. The recommendations are contained on the Green Order paper.
Cheers. Thank you very much for that introduction, Chris. Can I go to Byron Rhodes?
Yes, Leader, thank you very much. I think the Director has set out our policy very clearly in that statement. And the important thing is that we have not borrowed any money since 2009. And that's why our balance sheet is in good shape, as it's been described in this report. And we've no intention of borrowing any money in the future if we can possibly avoid it. That's the last resort. Once you start borrowing money, then you start to incur additional costs to set aside money for its repayment and, of course, the interest, and then you start to eat into the revenue budget as well. So we aim to stay exactly as we've done for the last 9 or 10 years, and stay on with the policy of financial rectitude, live within our means, keep reducing our costs when we can, and later on in this meeting we'll come to certain items which will describe what we're doing in adult social care and children's social care to do that. And then we'll stay ahead of the game, and one day we'll get fair funding and we'll be able to do more for the people of Leicestershire, which we should be able to do. So I'll move the motion.
I'll have to go on to yours. Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Hi, sorry about that. I've had to move computers. We've got a fault on that one. Can I call Richard Shepherd, please?
Thank you. And I will certainly second the motion. Chris Tambini referred, of course, quite correctly to financial resilience and said it wasn't an end in itself. And Byron referred to financial rectitude. Again, obviously correct. I suppose I put it in a more sort of homely way. I would say that we have, in the old saying, some money available for a rainy day. And my goodness, the pandemic has been a terrible event for the whole country. But thank goodness we have got that resilience, that money put by, to be able to respond to the emergency in the way that Chris has described, the free school meals, for example, and the grants, another example. So, again, I think our position is well known. We all regret very much, once again, fair funding has been postponed, but we are where we are, and thank goodness we have that ability to respond to this immediate crisis. So, as I said, Chairman, I will certainly second the motion with those remarks.
Thank you very much, Richard. As you can see, I'm not on an approved background, but I've had to use an emergency computer. Are there any more speakers, please? We have no more speakers, so can I assume everybody agrees with the motion? Thank you very much. The next one is agenda item 5, which is free school meal provision during school holidays, something we should be very proud of. Pages 37 to 42. So the report concerns arrangements to provide the free school meals over the school holidays. We had decided that this should be done a few weeks ago, and then the government actually came to its senses and decided to support us. This is very welcome, obviously, but I think we've been one of the leading counties in the whole country to be doing this. So while this report seeks approval for the funding, it does not look as though the costs will not now be covered. So again, I'm going over to Chris Tambini. Then after Chris, I'm going to call Byron again, and then I'm going to call Deborah. So over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Leader. As you said, the report sets out a proposal providing a voucher of £15 per week during school holidays. And those school holidays are going to be Christmas, half-term and Easter for those 12,000 pupils in Leicestershire who are eligible for free school meals. We are working through the kind of the detail and the logistics of doing that. And what we're proposing to do is replicate the voucher scheme that operated over the summer. And the voucher will be issued to those eligible families, and they will be accepted in a number of different supermarkets within Leicestershire, and they'll only be eligible for use for food. Before I finish, it's probably worth mentioning that families with children eligible for free school meals are one vulnerable group. There are clearly kind of families with preschool children or indeed kind of people without children who have clearly also been hard hit by the pandemic. And we're also working up further proposals for those groups which we'll bring back to Cabinet for you to decide on those as well. So we're not just purely focusing on free school meals.
Thank you very much, Chris. Deborah. Oh, sorry.
I think you want me.
Sorry, Byron. Sorry, Byron. I've gone to the Deborah before you. It is you, Byron.
Yes. Okay. I will move the motion. I think we've been some pride. I think that we took the decision early on. If you remember, in fact, you led on this to do this, even when we didn't necessarily have the funds made available to us by the government following the intervention of Mr. Rashford, who certainly made quite an impact nationally on the subject. I think it's to our credit that we did that, and it certainly was well received by the public. It's good that the government gave us the extra money to pay for it. That does mean now that we can extend the scheme for the preschool children and other people as well who need help. And that, of course, is what we should do. So I'm very, very pleased to be able to move this motion.
Thank you very much, Byron. Deborah Taylor.
Thank you, Leader. I'm very happy to second this item, and I was really pleased that this council announced back in October that they would earmark funding to extend the provision of free school meals to all eligible children in the county during the school holidays. We have many vulnerable families in the county, and providing these families with the ability to provide healthy food for their children over the school holidays is of great importance. I think we're all very aware of the stress that many families are facing during this pandemic, and to remove one of those stresses will go a long way to support these families. With the announcement that followed from the government of the 170 million ring-fenced package of support for children and families over the winters will also go a lot further than just providing healthy meals. So I look forward to that coming back to Cabinet. As Chris has already said, we'll be providing a voucher of £15 for each eligible pupil through the voucher scheme. That worked quite well during the summer holidays, and after speaking to schools and gathering their views from the head teachers how that worked, they were all supportive of the voucher scheme, so they'll be handed out towards the end of the autumn term. So I'm very happy that we've got this proposal.
Excellent summary, Deborah. I think it's something we should be proud of. So we've got the motion moved and seconded. All in favour? Thank you very much, guys. Agenda item 6, Annual Delivery Report and Performance Compendium 2020. This is on pages 43 to 202. It is the annual delivery report. There's been some significant new work has to be done and reorientation as a result of COVID. So we've got Andy Brown from our Business Intelligence team to take us through the report. And then again, this is one for you, Byron. So I'll come to you first. So welcome, Andy. Nice to see you, albeit virtually. Where are you?
Morning. Yes, thank you, Leader. Yes. I'll kick off with an introduction. Item 6 on the agenda presents the County Council Annual Delivery Report and Performance Compendium for 2020. The report itself largely focuses on progress against the Council's priorities as set out in the strategic plan during the last 12 months or so, and as such straddles the period when coronavirus first impacted the Council, with the first 6 months being very much pre-COVID-19 and the second half reflecting the significant response to and work to mitigate the impact of the pandemic. The separate performance compendium includes a range of supporting information on comparative funding performance, financial and service pressures and risks, and progress on recovery and the need for more savings plans. A lot of the data included is for 2019-20, and as such doesn't fully reflect much of the impact of COVID-19 on outcomes at this point, but we have included some additional information to highlight some of the outcome areas that the pandemic is now impacting upon. In relation to delivery, I think there are some really strong examples of delivery across the 5 priority areas, particularly but not just during the first half of the year. And the report has substantial sections on economy, transport and housing, healthcare and wellbeing, safe communities and children and families, and in relation to communities and the environment. And some of the key highlights are summarised in paragraphs 18 to 21 of the report. I wasn't planning to go through every element in detail, but some examples just to pull out include work on Project Alchemy, the Development Corporation and Enterprise Zones, business support investments and grants, and major transport schemes supporting housing and growth, road safety and the work of the operational highways teams on storm response. Also progress on health and care integration through the BCF plan, significant investments in social care accommodation, public health prevention work such as on social prescribing, healthy lifestyle and weight management services, together with important work on mental health, resilience and suicide prevention. Work has also progressed to improve children's social care services through the Ofsted Action Plan, with a new plan in place and further improvement underway, including through the work of the Children's Innovation Partnership, with significant investment into SEND services and an action plan progressing following the Ofsted inspection, with new resource bases and special schools coming on stream. And a new community safety strategy has also been agreed and extra funding secured in a number of areas, and Trading Standards has also implemented significant work. The new environment strategy has been agreed with £60 million investment and a variety of projects progressing, such as the Corn Solar Farm, Shire environmental grants, a new vision for country parks and improved waste facilities, and Shire community grants, and a variety of support has been provided to voluntary and community organisations, and good progress has been made on the Snibston redevelopment, Thomas Cook archive acquisition and smart libraries implementation. In accordance with new National Audit Office guidance this year, the report also sets out how the Council has adjusted operations to safer delivery modes and undertaken the major reorientation required during the second half of the year to support vulnerable people, communities, business, service users and staff during the extremely challenging period for everyone. And some of the response work carried out is summarised in paragraph 23 of the report, and really brings to the fore the important work across a range of services, and not always those at the forefront of public attention, such as around emergency management, training standards, public health protection, adult care support staff, communities delivery and economic support, as well as some of the critical back office support around procurement, legal and financial services, IT, data analysis and communications. I think it's clear from the report that services have stepped up significantly this year and gone above and beyond usual expectations and workloads to support the pandemic response. And I think a lot of credit is due for the efforts of senior leadership, staff, managers across the organisation this year to be able to do what they've done. Indeed, I was involved in the Council's successful Council of the Year application in 2009-10, which was impressive in itself. But I think given the impact of austerity and funding challenges and reductions since then, I think the Council delivering what it has delivered this year with the resources available has perhaps surpassed even that achievement with the work this year. So great credit, I think, for what has been delivered in the delivery section. Just looking quickly at the performance compendium and the data, the Council moved up to second in the County Performance League table in 2018-19, whilst being the lowest funded county. And we've also seen targeted improvement in the data in 2019-20, with some outcome areas improving, but also a number of outcome areas have now been impacted by the pandemic, understandably. As mentioned by Mr Sambini, fair funding has continued to be the Council's Achilles heel, with a significant disparity in funding and indeed council tax levels when looking at the London boroughs particularly, but also other councils. and it's very concerning that the fair funding implementation has been paused. But I know you've looked at this in a bit more detail on the earlier items, so I won't go into the financial side particularly. The performance compendium updates on a range of reports and data produced in the last year, which highlights the exacerbated pressure, risks and challenges now, as well as the significant funding gap and the need for further savings initiatives and fairer funding. And as a result of the performance review, paragraph 34 sets out a number of areas that now require a strong delivery focus and continued monitoring. The report was considered by the Scrutiny Commission on the 4th of November, and I think there was general welcoming of the broad nature of the report, highlighting the challenges as well as the positive delivery, and staff were thanked for their delivery. The Commission did raise a number of points set out in paragraphs 36 to 40, including the need for early clarity from the government on fairer funding, the post-EU funding arrangements for the Shared Prosperity Fund, the unitary business case submission process, funding for speed cameras, and the importance of public health prevention and homelessness provision, as well as welcoming the investment in country parks and requesting further facilities where possible. So the recommendations are set out in paragraph 3 of the report. An extremely challenging year when it was important that services stepped up to that challenge. So a great deal of credit in what has been achieved, but very significant challenges now moving forwards. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Andy. A very, very comprehensive report. Thank you very much indeed. Can I go straight to Byron?
Yes, it's me again. Look, this is a really good news story. There's 150 pages of solid work in here, which Andy Brown and his team have done well to put together in such a readable form, and I thank them for the work they've done and for putting it in such a clear way. I think anyone from outside the council reading that will be heartened by what we've been able to achieve, and especially against the background of the very low funding as well. You know, when the COVID problem started, I had great nervousness about whether certain elements of our service would be able to stand up, and it's a great tribute to our officers that they put the effort in, and at every level of the council, that people made the effort and maintained services and maintained the service to the public that they should expect and actually still manage to receive. So we've got an excellent report here, and I think it shows once again that if you concentrate on reducing your costs but with not reducing services, but at getting the very, very best value for money, then ultimately it will pay off, and it's paying off every year for us. And in fact, there are further improvements coming through. So there's a good deal to look forward to. But how we could do so much more if we had the fair funding. We would make good use of it, and the people of Leicestershire would benefit. But anyway, I'll move the acceptance of the report with the 6 item motion that's in front of the cabinet.
Yeah, thanks, Byron. I'll formally second for process. I think I've got Blake, although this computer's also playing up a bit. Blake?
Yes, thanks, Nick. You have. I just wanted to reiterate some of the points that Byron made. But before I do, just a point of note, on our cabinet papers, this particular report is down as starting on page 43. And I've noticed a pattern. It actually starts on page 41. And I think all of the subsequent reports start a couple of pages before what's been stated on the actual papers. So if someone's reading the papers, they need to be aware that the reports start before what's actually stated. That aside, can I just reiterate some of the points that Byron's made, specifically around how remarkable it is that all of this work has been undertaken, or most of this work has been undertaken throughout a pandemic. A lot of what the County Council does, some of the services we do, don't largely get seen within the local communities that we represent. And if anybody wants to see what we actually do and the output of the County Council, this report and this compendium would be a good place to start. It's absolutely remarkable what our officers have done during a pandemic, and I, for one, am extremely proud of that output, and also proud about our environmental agenda, the agenda that I'm currently leading. I believe we're one of the leading authorities in the whole country when it comes to this agenda, and we would have noted in the last week the government's own agenda around the environment to make us the #1 country when it comes to environmental sustainability in the world. in some respects, I like to think we're ahead of the curve, although the scale of what the government's ambition is on another level. But we are serious about this agenda. We've made great progress so far, not in only reducing our own carbon emissions, but in actually developing strategic plans as to how we're going to meet our own targets in 2030 and then 2050 beyond. And I think the output of the authority and this report in particular is a testament to the great work of our officers, and I thank them.
Yeah, great contribution there, Blake. Thank you. And finally, Andy, I know what you do is a lot of hard work back there in the back office, but you've done really, really well, because as Byron said, all this intelligence and it's actually readable. And I can certainly promise you, Andy, we'll be using it in our manifesto come May. So thank you very much indeed. Did you want to say anything else, Andy, before I just move the vote?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Leader.
OK, well, thanks for your work, Andy. I know we don't see you very, very often, but when we do, you bring good news. So it's been moved by Byron, seconded by me. All in favour? Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Agenda item 7, Adult Social Care Target Operating Model. This is on pages 203 to 230. It's a report from the Director of Adults and Communities on the implementation of the Target Operating Model for Adult Social Care Services, which is helping the department work better and produce better outcomes for people who use its services. So the first person will be John Wilson, who's the Director of Adults and Communities, and then Heather Pick as well, who will present the report. So is it you, John, or Heather?
I'll just introduce briefly. Thank you, Leader.
Very good, John.
So this is a report, as you said, on the completion of the work that we've been undertaking over the last 18 months to develop a new operating model in the department. It's worth just noting that this is probably the largest piece of transformation the department's undertaken over the last 5 years. And the outcome of the programme of work is likely to last and direct the work of the department over the next 5 years. And before I hand over to Heather, I just wanted to note that the success of the programme is in large part down to the hard work and commitment of staff and managers across the department, and in no small part down to the leadership that Heather's provided. So I'll hand over now to Heather, who will take members through the rest of the report. Thank you.
Now. There he is.
Thank you, John. So yes, I'm very proud to bring the TOM closure report to Cabinet. Most of you have been with us through this journey over the last 18 months. This programme, as John has said, has been a large programme that's covered most of the operational social care delivery in the care pathway. Our teams, including older adults, working age adults, and really the whole of the adult social care pathway delivery. We started with a diagnostic, as you'll remember, looking at what opportunities we might have within the service to make those improvements for both service users, people who use our services, and for staff and managers. We then moved into a design phase where we looked at those opportunities and we tested out some methodologies of how we might be able to put those opportunities into practice through our day-to-day service delivery. We moved into implementation across the whole of the care pathway then of the design phase and some of the testing that we had done in order to prove the concept of us working in a different way and measuring what outcomes we wanted to achieve through those new ways of working. The measurement period was designed to be undertaken just as COVID broke out. So there has been a COVID impact on this, and I will go into that, and it goes into a little bit more detail in the report. But I'm really pleased to say that the opportunities that we looked at in the beginning around people being in the right settings of care to make sure that they could be as independent as possible, both older adults and younger adults, and their opportunities for independent living. Looking at the amount of time people that were waiting for our involvement and our interventions, and seeing if we could increase the flow and the feedback to people and the delivery of their services. looking at how we support staff to make sure that the interventions that they were providing were meaningful and that they were well supported by their colleagues and management to make the right decisions, and to make those decisions in line with family and people's wishes for greater independence. And then, notwithstanding that, the financial impact of us changing the way that we work to make sure that we were doing that as efficiently as possible, and that the outcomes for people were cost effective and making the most use of the council's money. When we rolled that out into implementation, there were obviously measures to be put in place. We decided, because of COVID, to do the measurement in the period of implementation rather than post-implementation, so we got a true figure of what we could expect going forward for both the cashable and non-cashable benefits to people, and that was put in place. The COVID impact was significant, as you can imagine, with reduced service access and with reduced visiting for people, etc. But I'm really proud of the way the staff and management group have responded to this. And it has meant that although there was an impact in the early days of COVID, we are well on track now, and the robustness of the programme has meant that we were quickly able to pick up and progress those targets and ambitions for service users. And well, as you will see from the report, that means that we are on target and on track now, as we were previously, to deliver through the TOM programme. We have had two internal audits, one midway through just to make sure we were on track, and a final audit just pre-closure. And I'm pleased to say both of those audits have provided substantial assurance that the programme is robust, that the governance in place means that we have some assurance of sustainability, and that the maths and the calculations that have been done by our finance colleagues will bear out for the financial savings and the predicted savings for us going forward over the next 5 years. This is a closure report from the TOM, but there's no way that the actual work that we've done will close. We will continue with this. It has given us a good foundation of a target operating model going forward. What we have seen in the benefits have spurred us on and given us greater ambition to continue. We've seen, as you can see in the appendix that I've attached, we've had a 17% reduction in the amount of permanent residential admissions. If you'll remember, in the diagnostic, we had a third of people who were identified through the case reviews that didn't need to be in residential care and didn't want to be in residential care, but they were there because circumstances had led them to that, usually through hospital admission. We've, through this programme, sustained a 17% reduction in those permanent admissions, and that's led to an overall 5% reduction in the residential cohort. We've reduced our wait times considerably for people waiting for interventions. We've reduced the length of time people wait, but also the amount of people on that wait list. And moving through, we have seen a bigger use of data and evidence to support service planning going forward. And for people who are going through our reablement services, we've had a 30% increase with no increase in capacity, which means we are able to see 800 more people a year through our reablement services. So I think it has been a success both for the ambitions that we had at the beginning and for the job satisfaction for staff and managers. And we have seen better outcomes for our service users going forward. So we would want to sustain that. And we do have robust governance in place now to make sure that that isn't a closure of a project, but the start of a new target operating model that we want to continue and improve as we go along. I'll close there.
Thank you, Heather. Can I formally thank you and John Wilson for the work you do down there, and also thank Richard Blunt, who's not here today because he's ill, and Christine Radford for the work they do with you down there. I'll formally move the motion. I don't think there's any more to add. You've given a very, very comprehensive introduction, and I'll just call Byron to chat about money. Byron.
Right, okay. I'd like to chat about what they're doing as well, because I think Heather's explained the new model extremely well, and I must admit it was a pleasure to read the papers for this item. And of course, earlier this week, I spent some time going through the budget proposals for adult social care and communities in the coming 4 years ahead, and I'm greatly heartened by what I was told. This new approach, well, it's not completely new, but it's certainly a new initiative in the way that they set about their work. It has encouraged me greatly, and it will bring about substantial reductions in cost as well, which of course also pleases me. And although we've had to put in quite a bit of money initially to work it up, I think it will give us returns running into many millions of pounds in the years ahead, which makes the service more robust and more resilient, and that's what we want, because it's one of our most important services. And the last thing we want is anything going wrong with services to elderly people and to disabled people, which is most of what adult social care does. So I'm delighted to be able to second that the motion.
Yeah, thank you for that, Byron. You're right there. We are proud of what we do with adults and communities and children's social care. I can't see any more speakers unless I've got a fault. So the motion was moved by myself and seconded by Byron. Are we all happy? Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you, Heather. Agenda item 8, Leicester and Leicestershire Strategic Transport Priorities 2020 to 2050. These are on pages 231 to 310. So it's the results of consultation prepared in partnership with the City Council, seeks our agreement for its adoption, sets out the key long-term approach to transport priorities for us both for the next 30 years, a long time ahead. Please note you've got comments in from Max on behalf of the Labour Group, and we've had comments from CPRE. These have been published on the website next to this report and are attached to the order paper. So we've got Anne Carruthers, who's the Director of Environment and Transport, to respond to the points made and present the report. Then I'll be going over to you, Trevor, as the Cabinet member with responsibility. So have we got you, Anne?
Yes, morning, Leader. Thank you very much for that. The County Council, along with the City Council, as the two local transport authorities, have produced this document, the Strategic Transport Priorities. It's a framework that directs the development of transport initiatives and investments to support the growth agenda out to 2050, as you say, a considerable time period. And that growth agenda as set out in Leicester and Leicestershire's Strategic Growth Plan. We carried out extensive consultation on the document earlier this year from February to the end of June, and that included an extension because of the COVID situation. We received 102 responses, and of those, 70% agreed with the 5 themes set out in the framework and therefore the general approach of the strategic transport priorities. Appendix A provides a comprehensive summary of the key matters raised throughout that consultation and their proposed responses. Paragraph 45 to 52 of your report outline the main issues. I'll just highlight one of those issues, if I may, that was raised during that consultation, which was the call to pause and rethink the strategic growth plan itself. Indeed, Leader, you mentioned the submission we have received from CPRE, which is included in the order papers, and one of their key points is that the strategic growth plan needs a rethink. This consultation we carried out was on the Strategic Transport Priorities document, not the growth plan itself. And any decision to review the growth plan would be for the member advisory group made up of the member partner authorities governing the strategic growth plan, which was approved, as you know, in December 2018. It's not a matter for this consultation. However, in a bit more detail, Midlands Connect have completed their study into the A46 which is also covered in this report because it is, a key element that within strategic transport priorities and mentioned within the strategic growth plan. And CPRE highlight this as a reason for this rethink to the strategic growth plan. I just want to be clear that the Midlands Connect A46 study concluded that to cater for the long distance traffic on the A46 to 2030, the option that gave most benefits to that long distance traffic was improvements to the existing route, i.e. the M1, the A46 Western Bypass and Hobbyhorse Junction. That means that an expressway standard road to the south and east of Leicester is not justified. However, to facilitate the growth that the strategic growth plan sets out around the south and east of Leicester, local standard infrastructure is still needed. This conclusion of the Midlands Connect study does not mean the development proposed in the strategic growth plan or its distribution is no longer fit for purpose. The key point I'd stress, which also applies to the other factors raised by CPRE and indeed in some of the consultation exercise responses, such as carbon emissions, climate change, the impact of COVID, and therefore we should have a rethink of the strategic growth plan, is that the strategic transport priorities is a framework that directs the detailed transport work that will need to happen over the coming years, and as such provides flexibility to take on board and consider these other factors in how we go about supporting the planned growth agenda. I'd also just want to highlight that the document itself, the Strategic Transport Priorities, went to Environment and Transport Overview and Scrutiny Committee in March, and their comments are summarised in paragraph 54 of the report. The proposed final version of the document is as Appendix B, and if approved today, basically the work will start with our partner authorities to identify the transport requirements to support that planned growth. The recommendations are as per the order paper. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Anne. Trevor, this is yours.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Well, I'd like to move the motion on section 8 of the draft order paper then, which Anne has alluded to, and thank my director for a very comprehensive description of the work that you have been doing with Sir Peter Salisbury, Leader, in bringing this transport priority document to fruition. If I can refer members to page 278 of the attached document, it does amply show us the hub and spoke methodology that we have used to look at our transport priorities, and indeed actually allows us very quickly to see what Anne was referring to. It helps us, of course, with our green agenda, very specifically when we work with the city on our radial routes, which are there to be seen on 278, and of course also when we start to link and look at travel between cities, within cities and around the county of Leicestershire, and therefore informs us as to just how we can get a resilient transport network which is as green as we possibly can. I think Blake may pick up some more of the green issues, Leader. With that, having proposed it, I will leave it to Blake. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, Blake, thank you.
Thanks, Leader. Yes, I'll second the motion on the order paper. I was the lead member at the time that took a report to Cabinet to identify the need that we needed to work with the city and cross-boundary on identifying strategic priorities. I think it needs to be noted that the government in the last year and a half, 2 years, are beginning to change their approach as to how we bid for monies and what monies they make available to invest into our strategic road network. In light of that change, it's imperative that we do work with the city and indeed all of our neighbouring authorities in identifying where to put investment and then working together to bid for that investment. And in some respects, this strategic document will help us do just that. I appreciate it spans to 2050, but as ever, it's fluid. Things change. Only in the last week, we've heard an announcement from the government that they're bringing their electric vehicle target to 2030, which means, according to their current position, that the outlawing of diesel and combustion engines vehicles will start from 2030 rather than 2050. That will obviously have an impact on our transportation network. On the green agenda, I think Trevor's picked up on the relevant point that this is strategic, and fortunately for the city, they have already had an allocation of some considerable monies. I think it's nearly £100 million to plan as to what they do in terms of improving their network within the city. And we obviously need to be cognizant of that and work with that. For our own part, a lot of our tactical actions when it comes to how we approach our movements in and around Leicestershire will come through our local transport plans, which will be a document that's yet to be fleshed out, or the iteration of the new local transport plan, but will obviously take into account the findings of this strategic document that we're looking at today. So with that, I have no problem with supporting and seconding this motion, and I'll leave it at that, Leader.
Yes, thank you very much, Blake. Thank you very much, Trevor. I think it is an excellent document. I can't see any other speakers, so I'll just say it has been moved by Trevor and seconded by Blake, the proposed motion. All in favour? Thank you very much. Number 9, Brexit. EU exit transition, pages 311 to 318. It concerns our preparation and partner organisations for 31st of December. We've got Tom, who's Assistant Chief Executive, to present the report. Tom, are you still below?
They don't use that term anymore, Leader, but I guess I am in practice.
Very good.
Thank you. Yes, you'll be aware, Cabinet, that negotiations between the UK government and the EU are continuing, and therefore arrangements from the 1st of January remain uncertain to some extent. But we are planning and preparing for new arrangements from the 1st of January, and that those plans have been informed by reasonable worst case planning assumptions provided by the government, and some of the potential national risks in those assumptions are shown at paragraph 13 of the report. Both within the LRF and within the council, preparations for the end of the transition period are being overseen alongside our COVID-19 response work and preparations for any other winter pressures that might arise. You can see at paragraph 15 the EU exit related work streams which are being overseen by the LRF and which the County Council is feeding into. From paragraph 16, specific council related risks and preparations are described, and I'll mention some of those. So there's a specific risk relating to freight related traffic disruption at and near East Midlands Airport, and plans are being put in place to manage those risks. But I think it's important to note that those risks are considered to be quite a bit lower than they were in 2019, and that's due to a number of factors, including the much reduced numbers of passenger numbers at East Midlands Airport, and that's led to a freeing up of car parking space, which is helpful in terms of dealing with freight issues should there be backlogs, and also the preparations that operators at the airport and nearby have made. And you'll note in the report that the anticipated cost of the traffic measures we need to put in place is now £45,000, and that's a fraction of the cost that was estimated a year ago. With respect to social care, paragraph 21, the end of the transition period does add some risks to those already posed by COVID-19 in relation to supply of workforce and the strength of the provider market. New border regulations at East Midlands Airport are expected to increase pressures on trading standards, and that and other work will also increase demands on our legal services section. Clearly, a really important issue is ensuring local businesses are prepared for the new approach from the 1st of January, and work is underway with the LEP and with other partners to get key messages to local businesses over the next few weeks so that they can prepare. And the potential longer term impacts of EU exit are being considered as part of the COVID-19 economic recovery work. At the moment, it is considered that the risks are being managed appropriately, but the situation's obviously being kept under constant review as we move towards January the 1st. The recommendation is to note the contents of the report.
Yeah, thank you for that, Tom. It's good that you're thinking about East Midlands Airport. Obviously, you've got the two members on here that represent around the airport, that's myself and Trevor. And also we need to give some thought, Tom, I presume you have, to logistics, because as you know, Leicestershire is the logistics capital of England. But I'm happy that you've addressed them. So I've got no problem with moving the report be noted, and I'll call Blake.
Yeah, simply to say I second the report. Clearly, we've got some first-hand experience as a country and as a region and as an authority area in dealing with a crisis. We're living in the middle of a pandemic, so I dare say that our preparations in respect of Brexit will be in hand. Thank you.
Okay, I have no other speakers. Motion moved by myself that the report be noted, seconded by Blake. All in favour? Thank you, everyone. Agenda item 10, Melton North Sustainable Neighbourhood Draft Master Plan, pages 319 to 338. This report is the Council's response to the consultation from Melton Borough Council on its Melton North Sustainable Neighbourhood Draft Master Plan. Since circulation of the report, there has been a response from Melton Borough Council's Cabinet. A letter sent by the County Council to Melton on the November the 17th has been circulated. It's published on the website next to this report, and a revised recommendation is set out on the order paper. With us today, we've got Nick Thomas, who's the head of County Council Planning. He will take us through the report and explain the latest position, and then I shall go to Trevor to speak. So, Nick, are you there?
Yes, I am, Leader, and good morning.
Good morning, go ahead.
Thank you. This report, yes, relates to the Melton North Sustainable Neighbourhood Draft Master Plan, and the intention is to bring Cabinet up to speed with the recent developments around this. The requirement for the master plan is set out in the Melton Borough Council local plan, which was adopted in 2018, and that required a master plan to have been prepared in advance of or as part of submitting their first planning application. So we're about 2 years behind where we ought to have been. The master plan is important as it binds together all the different components of the development and brings together issues such as the types and density of housing, where that should go, where the schools should go, how it connects to the roads and landscaping, etc. So most importantly, it buys in the stakeholders and the public into this type of development and is the framework for how future planning applications will be brought forward. Now, the Borough Council shared with the County Council a draft master plan, as you mentioned a few moments ago, for the neighbourhood in early October. And you'll see from the report that a response was provided on the 27th of October following consultation with yourself, Leader, and other lead members. And a copy of that response is provided as an appendix to the report. And you'll see that significant concerns were raised, and I'll just highlight a couple of them, the main points. First of all, concerns about a lack of engagement with the County Council and other stakeholders, such as the public. We were concerned about how the document had been produced by the developers themselves rather than independently by the Borough Council, and therefore that puts question marks about the independence and how this may favour the developers. We were concerned that the master plan only covers part of the sustainable neighbourhood area, and that conflicts with the explicit requirement within the local plan, which it should be cover the entire site boundary. And then finally, the further concern was raised that the document doesn't deal with viability, and so we have no way of knowing whether what is planned is affordable. And that has an impact, of course, on the County Council's infrastructure, such as highways and schools, and how that's funded. Leader, you'll see from the report that since we submitted our letter of objection in October, there has been further developments, and we found out on the 10th of November that despite the County Council's concerns, a report had been prepared by the Borough Council for their meeting, which was on Wednesday this week, the 18th of November. But unfortunately, most of the concerns have not been taken on board. So we wrote to the Borough Council on the 17th of November, which following further discussion with lead members and the Chief Executive set out in writing some concerns, including errors with the Borough Council's report, and a copy of that letter has been circulated to you. It was important to send out this letter in order to point out the consequences for relevant parties if a substandard master plan is approved, as that ought to guide all future development for the growth north of Melton. And within the letter, we explain that we would give the document very limited weight when we are to comment on planning applications and deal with planning matters with both with the Borough Council and with developers. So yes, the final update is the outcome of the Borough Council's Cabinet meeting on the 18th of November. And yes, their members have agreed with the County Council in terms of our request to defer. They have deferred making a decision, and this will hopefully pave the way for proper discussions to take place to overcome the concerns that have been raised. That's all I wanted to say, Leader. The recommendation is to note the two reports, to welcome the decision of the Borough Council to defer approval of the master plan, and finally to update that the County Council will contribute to the development of the master plan, and we of course will keep members updated with progress. Thank you, Leader.
Excellent, Nick. Trevor?
Thank you, Leader. I'd like then to formally move the order paper section 10, the two items there, the motion, and say that I'm delighted that Melton have actually just pulled back from committing to probably having to redo it all later and it all unravelling, which is what we don't want to happen. I mean, there's no doubt that we at County are absolutely committed to delivering for the constituents there a really viable plan, and this is the most important thing, which will stand scrutiny at every level. I thank Nick and the officers for doing just that, and indeed the chief exec for taking such care over how we go. The care is there because we will be exposed by up to £100 million with grants. And as a county, that's what we're doing for Melton. But do you know what? We have to be absolutely right that we can get it all brought home, and that's our goal. With that, I'll leave it. And I see Byron might want to say a word, Leader.
Thank you. Before I go to Byron, I've got Blake to comment. Blake.
Thank you, Leader. I'll second the motion, but I reserve my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Byron.
Yes, Leader, thank you for letting me come in on this one. I think we're right just to note it at this stage, and it's a great regret that Melton Borough Council have taken so long to bring this forward. It really should have been started and offered to us back in 2019, and the work should have been done immediately after the local plan was approved in October 2018. But we are where we are, and of course it does contain quite a number of issues which we feel mean it has to be substantially improved. In the meantime, of course, we've already committed as a council to build the north and eastern section of the bypass road, or the Melton North Distributor Road as it's now called, at our risk. And that has not been widely acknowledged, I think, as it should have been, and the response that we've made. So this plan is very important to securing the contributions that we'll need from developers to ensure that will, in the end, be wash its face, as it were. It will be paid for by a combination of grant and developer contributions. At the moment, we think it will be, but of course there are some doubts while it remains incomplete. So I do hope that the Borough Council, working with our officers, will put all the efforts they possibly can into completing it as soon as possible. It's of vital importance to the County Council.
Sure. No other speakers, Blake, so you reserved.
Yes, thank you, Nick. I just wanted to say, from my perspective, that I welcome very much the fact that the Melton Borough Cabinet, led by Joe, have decided to defer a decision, so a proper consultation can take place with ourselves and maybe a few others. At the end of the day, I think there's been a lot of reporting, both in Melton and perhaps even in Leicestershire, of a possible conflict between the County Council and Melton Borough Council. I don't believe that's so. I think this is a true example of working with friends. We are friends with Melton Borough Council. Some of Melton Borough Council's elected members are our own colleagues, and we work very closely with them. And I'd be very, very wary of any friendship that didn't feel they could speak the truth to one another. So the fact that we've been able to put our genuine concerns on record, send it to their cabinet cabinet have considered it and taken a decision to recognise the content of our concerns and then defer a decision to deal with that, I think is the best form of partnership working and should be credited and commended. Thank you.
Very good points there, Blake. I mean, proper discussions are appropriate. I mean, I like Melton Mowbray. I like the leader there, Joe. I think he's made the right decision in deferring this. They are a very important part of the county, but they are only a part of the county. So they must make sure that the development washes its face. Having said that, I'm happy that progress is being made. I'm confident in the long term that we'll be able to deliver these roads for Melton Mowbray. So with that, the motion was moved by Trevor and seconded by Blake. Are we all happy with the motion? Thank you very much, and thanks for your good work up there, Nick. Okay, number 11. Draft City of Leicester Local Plan 2020 to 2036. This is on pages 339 to 380. It concerns our comments to the City Council's local plan, which includes policies and proposals for development of Leicester up to 2036. We've got Tom here again, Assistant Chief Exec. He'll present the report and highlight the key comments that are included in our response to the consultation. So, are you back, Tom?
Yes, I am, Leader. Thank you.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yes, as you say, the plan covers the period up to 2036 and has been prepared by the City Council in the context provided by the Strategic Growth Plan, jointly prepared by the County Council, the City Council, the District Councils and the LEP. And consistency with the SGP has been a key consideration in preparing the response. There will be a further opportunity for Cabinet to comment on the draft local plan when a submission plan version is consulted on in late 2021, early 2022. A high-level summary of the draft plan is set out in paragraphs 28 to 31, and perhaps the key issue is in terms of housing provision, where the plan proposes 29,000 homes to be provided up to 2036, with a particular focus on the central development area and on 5 large strategic locations. That does, however, leave an unmet housing need of 7,742 dwellings, which will need to be accommodated in the county through agreement with the local planning authorities and the County Council, and work on that is underway. A statement of common ground is being prepared under the auspices of the Members Advisory Group. The City Council's approach to employment land provision is summarised at paragraph 30. 2 weeks ago, the Scrutiny Commission considered the plan and received a presentation from the City Council's Head of Planning. The Commission's comments are summarised at paragraphs 36 to 38, and the full note of the Commission's discussion is at Appendix B. And some changes have been made to the proposed detailed response in Appendix A to take account of the Commission's comments. The proposed response of the County Council is summarised at paras 39 to 45 and in more detail in Appendix A. The plan is broadly welcomed as being clear and comprehensive. A number of detailed amendments, improvements and clarifications are proposed for submitting to the County Council. And I'm just going to refer to a couple of the more strategic comments in this introduction. Firstly, that the plan should include a stronger statement regarding the cumulative and cross-boundary impacts of growth, including impacts on transport and other infrastructure provision. And clearly that's a key issue given the importance of infrastructure provision to local communities, to the local economy, and also implications for the council's finances. And secondly, that the plan should ensure that any further shortfall in meeting Leicester's housing needs should be addressed to ensure that the unmet housing need doesn't increase beyond the 7,742 identified. The recommendation is to approve the proposed response to the City Council.
Good, thank you, Tom. Good report, good recommendation. I'll move it, please.
Yes, I'm happy to second. I think the comments are very thorough we do need to have be able to comment and consult on cross-boundary issues. It's incredibly important for everyone in Leicestershire. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good point, Louise. Luckily, we do have good relationships with the City Council, and I have good relationships with the City Mayor. So moved by me, seconded by Louise. All in favour? Thank you. Moving on. Thanks, Tom. Residual waste procurement, pages 381 to 386. An update on the Council's procurement of its residential waste treatment capacity. Can you guys note we've got comments in from Max again on behalf of the Labour Group. These have been published on the website and are attached to the order paper. We've got Jo Gill here, who's the Assistant Director of Environment and Transport. She's our rubbish expert. So over to you, Jo.
Thank you, Leader, for my shining introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. This report is linked to a historic Cabinet decision that was taken back in 2016, where we were directed to merchant with the waste market into the medium term, and a commitment in that to keep Cabinet updated on progress. So the purpose today is to update Cabinet on an active procurement for a residual waste treatment contract and just highlight some of the key milestones going forward linked to finalising that procurement. The body of the report sets out the scale of the residual waste that we manage as a waste disposal authority, why we have a desire to strategically move away from the heavy reliance on landfill as a disposal option. It also sets out some of the previous merchanting arrangements that we've entered into since 2016. So an example of that being the share option that we took with Coventry's Energy from Waste facility. And so how this procurement represents the next step in securing that future treatment capacity, whilst looking to reduce future costs, improve our service resilience and improving our environmental performance. From point 18 in the report, we do set out the procurement approach that's being followed and where we are in that competitive dialogue with the market. So currently we're dialoguing on detailed solutions and we're looking to select the preferred bidder in approximately February of next year, with a commencement date any time between April of next year and April 2023. And that's just dependent on the solution that comes forward. So allowing for the confidential nature of an active procurement, which we're currently in, we do try to set out some of the high level procurement objectives and minimum requirements, and they're in points 27 and 28 in the report. And if I may, Leader, it just might be opportune that I answer Max Hunt's question that he does raise in his submission on behalf of the Labour Group. In it, he does ask about the publishing of 3 of those minimum requirements, which procedurally are only available to bidders. So just for clarity, Councillor Hunt is correct. The contract documents and minimum requirements are only available to bidders that have qualified to take part in the procurement. However, the information contained in paragraph 28 of the Cabinet report deliberately only provides a high-level overview of those key strategic minimum requirements. So the technical detail of all the minimum requirements, of which there are many, are provided in the procurement pack, and those have only been provided to the qualifying bidders. So with that, Leader, that just brings me to the recommendations in the report, but I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
It's a good report, Jo, but as you say, it's a balance really between passing what we need to pass and putting information in the public domain. I think, to be fair to Max, he's generally got the best interests of the County Council at heart. I like the guy, so I think his questions are pertinent, but you've answered them for him. Can I go to Trevor?
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to move then the motion on section 11 of the order paper. Thank Joanna for her continued hard work with rubbish. It really is going to pay off, and I mean that, because I mean, if you look at the resource implications on paragraph 11 of the report, where once we get through the procurement process and its confidentiality, of course, which we trust Jo implicitly in the officers with, we will get to a point where in the long run, it looks as though we could be saving, 840,000 is the figure mentioned in the report of a savings target. That's considerable, and that's really on target for us, and I think we're doing extremely well. Leave it at that. Thank you, Leader.
Cheers, Trev. Blake?
Yeah, just to reiterate what Trevor said, I think Joe and the department do an amazing job for us, considering the resources that we have available. There are many authorities in the country that have far greater resources than Leicestershire County Council to deal with the waste. And the other point I'd like to make, and it goes back to the annual report, there are a lot of services at Leicestershire County Council that people don't necessarily see, and this is a really good example. We see the dustbin men come collect rubbish from our curbside, from our own house in our localities, and we have 7 different borough and district councils that do that job. But all of that waste then becomes our responsibility, and we have to dispose of it. And there's big money and big processes, and at a time of a pandemic where there's been outages and supply chains have been short-staffed, etc., we've had to work those problems, and Joe's team's had to react. So she's done a great job, and I support the report. It's vitally important that we have waste disposal provision in the future. Thank you.
Very good. Well, as everybody said, Joe, it's a good report. In my view, you're a good officer, and we're lucky to have you. So it's been moved by Trevor, seconded by Blake. All in favour? Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
13 is items referred from overview and scrutiny. There are none. Agenda item 14, urgent items. There are none. So for members of the public that are listening in, this concludes the public part of the agenda. And so thanks for attending. Under 15, I now move that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 3.10 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Act, and that in all circumstances of the case, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. I move. You second, Blake? Just raise your hand.
I second, Leader.
All in favour? Okay, thank you. Can we just ask everyone who's not a Cabinet member or presenting either of these reports to leave the meeting, and you just give me a couple of minutes to get the nod that